Uh,
Hey,
he-
Hey,
welcome to iCarly.
hello.
what?
I know, you know. Wait, no, hold on.
I know you know. Um, I'm iCarly from iCarly.
I'm Jeanette McCarthy. That's her name, right?
Jeanette McCarthy.
Is that not her name?
No, Jeanette McCurdy.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right, that works.
I guess I'm the fucking loser that has a crush on both of them.
Fucking Gibby looking
Bread.
ass, Gibby.
Not
Fred
Gibby. His name's
Flintstone.
like Gibby. Gibby's the fat kid.
Dude, Gibby is too good for this world.
Isn't Gibby a rapper now?
Is he really?
Yeah.
Is
Hold
Gibby?
on.
Hold on.
Let's Google this shit.
Is, Gi-
Is this the worst opening of the Roundabout cast?
Does
that we've
Gibby
ever-
is rapper?
I have. Is Gibby a serial killer?
What?
Gibby's a rapper, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty in there with hip hop.
He's a rapper now.
Freddie Gibbs, that's his name. Freddie Gibbs, right?
Oh, fuck that.
What do you mean?
I got a gif of him without a shirt on doing a booty dance.
Same.
Okay. Well, maybe I lied. Maybe Freddie Gibbs is not him at all. And
No, no. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember Gibby from iCarly?
Look at him
He's a
now.
rapper now.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Roundabout podcast.
Oh yeah, that's what we actually are.
I'm your host, Willer.
I'm Bradley, formerly known as Gibby from iCarly.
And I'm Joe, not Jeanette McCurtney.
Yeah, Jeanette McCarthy instead. We're gonna record an episode that's not 5 goddamn hours. Can y'all believe that we recorded 5 hours
Yeah,
of
holy
Roundabout
shit.
cast last time?
There's just too much good stuff out there to talk
Holy
about.
crap. For all the worm people, there's a bit of a special schedule change. You'll see it. We talk about it when we recorded it. But Bradley and Joe, and I guess a little bit of me, are gonna talk about Watchmen. You guys read the comic. I've only watched the movie, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna tag in where applicable.
Yeah, it's interesting because
Oh.
like I've only read the comic. Willer has only seen the movie, and Joe's done both.
Hold on, let me get mine.
So only his opinion really matters.
Yeah.
So I'm going to preference why we're talking about this. So HBO has a Watchmen series
Oh, that's right. I can watch that.
going on right now. I've watched the first 4 or 5 episodes of it. And so far I've really, really enjoyed the show.
So,
So the show is set in 2019.
oh fuck.
In an alternative world, in the Watchmen alternative world, after the entire events of the Watchmen comic book, not the movie. It
Holy
doesn't
shit.
pull anything from the movie. It only goes off the comic book.
Right. So as someone who knows the ending of the comic book and knows that difference, am I good to go? Like, is there anything else severe that I should know before I jump in?
I think you're relatively good to go. There might be 1 or 2 things that, like, if you were watching it, you might get really confused. But like, you can just do a quick Google search because even those details are pretty minuscule. Like, for example, Ozymandias doing genetic experiments and doing all of that. It's not mentioned in the movie.
Well, you have his cat thing, but yeah, it's not a big deal.
But no, like he like clones people, makes his own people.
Well,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah. It's a really small like subplot, and like it not even a subplot. It's just a small detail about him, but it comes up in the show,
Okay.
like incredibly importantly. But yeah, so I read Watchmen back when the movie first came out because like, oh man, superhero movies, I gotta know them all. And I read Watchmen, and everything about it just went over my head. Like, it's Watchmen is a wild ride of a comic.
To be
Yeah.
fair, you have to have pretty high IQ.
I guess while we're doing it, I guess I should share my experience with it where I first read Watchmen back in like high school, before I was self-aware. And so I think I wasn't really old enough to appreciate it. I was just like, this is a lot of words.
Yeah, it's but yeah, Bradley and I read a comic, and Bradley, you're gonna have to forgive me because I'm not gonna have access to the comic probably for a hot minute because of
shit.
my iPad. I had to get the digital version.
Yeah, fortunately I have special I was about to call it a Tonkobon, but that's only
Oh
for
my
manga.
god.
You've done it.
It's
You've
all
entered a
of-
full weeb.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it's
good.
all of Watchmen compiled in one volume, and it has like concept art in the back, which is really cool.
That's a thick boy. You sent us a picture. That's a big ass
That's a
comic.
big bitch.
Yeah. So, Bradley,
Hey.
you of the three of us, you're the person that really likes it whenever a comic or a movie does something that tries to turn the superhero formula on his head. I would say Watchmen is probably the first iteration of that ever.
Yeah, and well, I mean, it's tough to say if it was the first ever because I don't know everything about the history of superhero media.
Like this is pretty much a significant point of where comics afterwards took this really kind of more morally gray, gritty route.
Yeah, I feel like
when did Watchmen comic come out?
1985.
So I think that's right before like the more gritty era where you see like stuff with where Punisher has that enemy that has a bunch of babies strapped on him and dumb stuff like that.
Yeah. 1986 is when it originally came out. Yeah. So it's during there. It's kind of during this like it sparked this cultural revolution. And it's one of the biggest themes about this in the superhero comics is that we have two different superhero groups in this series. You have the Minutemen, which are the original kind of superhero crime fighter people, and the Crime Busters group, which is basically all of our main character cast. And you get great juxtaposition between the two, and it kind of also it's really funny now because it reflects how movies and superhero plots are made now compared to when they were made like way back when they were super campy and everything, which I thought was funny rereading it because everyone looks back at those old superhero stories and those superhero comics and they're all like happy-go-lucky and more like morally right.
I vividly remember that scene with like Night Owl's mentor, and he's like fighting dudes with like big fishbowl helmets. Like there's a little flashback of his heydays while he's getting the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah, that's an extended scene that they add in later. But yeah, that's a really brutal and sad scene too.
Yeah, but you can tell that the good old days were a lot campier and different.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, like Dr. Manhattan had like a rival. Maybe it was a one-sided rivalship. But the fact that this guy didn't just get atomized, I guess it shows that those were less dark days.
Yeah, it does a really good job of like I'm trying to find the correct phrase of word saying this. The comic is very much people trying to be superheroes rather than like superheroes also being people.
Yeah, that's like one thing I was gonna say is I think the comic really nails what it was going for, which is that when reading it, none of these characters registered as superheroes to me. Because by their own admission, like in the text, they say, like, no, like we know we're just regular people who really liked these comics, and so we wanted to dress up like the characters did, and that's exactly the vibe that they give to me. That these are just people who would probably otherwise be police officers or in the military, which a lot of them were. But because they were inspired, they just dressed up. So
yeah, and it just it does a great like kind of it does a great job in the comic of like really delving down into like these personal conflicts that they have. Like you have what's the Night Owl's name? The second one, Dan Driver, and his crush on Lori, and him being like a 40-year-old kind of loser and being like feeling very boyish. Like that's his whole character arc and everything. It's just it takes several different parts of the just people in general and throwing them into like these like superhero, like making them superheroes, and you realize just how fucked up it would be to actually have a person be a superhero kind of thing.
Yeah,
like it's just but so one of the big things that like about the comic, and I mentioned this before, that I really want to discuss is the ending of the comic versus the ending of the movie.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what they did different in the movie.
Oh,
So
boy.
yeah, so the movie I think does a better job at the very end of having that Chekhov's gun go off compared to the comic. Um, the comics ending works and it creates like horrendous. When I say horrendous, I mean like just like horrifying visual imagery of like the aftermath of everything.
Oh yeah.
But like I think the movie does a better job of like being like, oh, here's this super powerful being, and we frame him to like blow up the world and cause world peace. Also big Watchmen spoilers, I guess, for a comic
Yes.
that's over 15 years old, a movie that's probably over 10 years old now. Or no, probably the comic's over like 30 years.
It's like
old
40, dude. Time's
Yeah.
passed.
Yeah. So in the comic, Willer, as you know, Ozymandias' plan is, and you get like one page snippets back to it every once in a while, is that he creates this alien monster, and he has a bunch of like artists, biochemists, and a bunch of other stuff like engineer this monster. He teleports into Manhattan and uses it to kill like 3 million people, like half the population of Manhattan. And it's in a good other portion of it insane.
What's the reasoning in the comics?
Of why?
Yeah.
The same reasoning, like he wants to prevent like World War, he wants to prevent humanity from killing each other.
It's basically like sacrifice a few million in New York
Yeah.
to convince everyone that the world is under assault by this extra dimensional threat, and everyone becomes united against this new threat.
I kind of like what the movie did. So to show my hand, I might be in the minority because I know a lot of people don't like the Watchmen movie.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like it quite a bit. And what that ending does is Ozymandias blows up a nuke in Manhattan, and he blames it on Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, he purposely engineers a bomb that replicates
His energy signature or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh fuck.
And the idea there is that Dr. Manhattan, as the story analogy of a nuclear bomb, the idea is that everyone bands against Dr. Manhattan and kind of like force him to move out of planet Earth. So he just pieces out at that point. He leaves the planet because he's that disconnected to begin with. And people come together with the idea that they all defeated this common enemy and force him to leave.
Unite together just in case he ever comes back.
And I guess the analogy there is like if everyone got rid of their nukes, like denuclearization. I feel like it's trying to evoke those feelings, and I think that's a pretty cool ending, especially because while Ozymandias is explaining the plan, they're like, "We're not going to let you do this." He's like, "Oh, I already did it 35 minutes ago."
That's a line straight from the comic.
Okay, because that's the fucking best. I'm glad it's in both.
Oh yeah, it's one of the best moments in the entire thing.
Yeah, that was actually, I remember before I ever read Watchmen the first time, I had seen that panel before I ever read the comic, and I was just like, well, I want to know what the fucking plan was, and that's why I read it in the first place.
Once again, Bradley gets to the end. It's like, man, that seems interesting. I wonder how it got
a trend with things that I like.
But so the same thing kind of happens in Watchmen, the comic. The comic. But there's some really small key differences in the comic that I enjoy a lot more post that incident than I do in the movie.
Let's hear
it. So in the movie, because I just watched it, at the very end, like it's pretty much similar except for the part where like they use a bomb made out of Dr. Manhattan to blow up New York and everything. It's pretty similar up until the point where Rorschach walks out, and at this moment, Night Owl tries to go stops him. Gets really upset that Dr. Manhattan kills him, runs back inside, starts being Ozymandias, and basically has the conversation that Dr. Manhattan has with Ozymandias with him rather than Dr. Manhattan. And I think that's like a big problem to me.
It's been a while. What's the crux of the conversation again?
Wait. Instead of Dr. Manhattan having that last conversation with Ozymandias, who does it?
Night Owl?
What the fuck? No.
Yeah.
I think
what
it was
happens
so
is,
important that Dr. Manhattan is the one telling him these things.
So what happens is after everything happens, Manhattan goes and kills Rorschach. Like that happens either way. Lori and Dan like kind of go off and they like hold each other and they're happy to be alive and they sleep with each other and they're just there to like kind of be appreciative of the fact that they're there for each other, kind of deal. And also like there's a whole other motif about the lovers like embracing each other throughout the entirety of the comic, and it pays off at that moment. But what happens is Ozymandias, while Manhattan's killing Rorschach, goes back up to his chambers and has this meditation. And Manhattan comes up to him and says, like, I understand what you did. I completely get it from a utilitarian perspective. But you've essentially isolated yourself from the rest of humanity. You are now actually the monster that you've taken on that mantle of being that monster. And maybe no one knows that, but you know that. So you have to like carry that weight.
Yeah. And the amazing thing I love about this conversation is after doing all this, what Ozymandias is really looking for from Dr. Manhattan in this conversation is some kind of validation that he did the right thing. Because, you know,
He's
just
God.
previous to this, everyone kind of agreed that, okay, we have to keep quiet. Like, technically, your plan worked, but nobody is going to tell him he did the right thing. And he wants this from Dr. Manhattan. And Dr. Manhattan will still say, yes, I understand why you did it and the plan worked, but he won't necessarily was the right thing. And of course, that could be because Dr. Manhattan doesn't really think of things in those terms. But the very last thing we see of them is where right before Dr. Manhattan takes his leave, Ozymandias just asks him, I did the right thing, didn't I? Like, it all worked out in the end. And Dr. Manhattan leaves him by saying, in the end, nothing ends. Nothing ever ends. Everything's going to keep going on. And this, like, and then we see this last panel of Ozymandias just looking, like, kind of profoundly upset.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I love this is because he is someone who had been looking to the future for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And he prides himself on being able to see the big picture of what's going to come, but he never looked beyond this moment where he actually executes his plan to this. That like he wasn't looking beyond this. He really wanted to pull off this plan, and he's like, if I pull that off, everything was okay. I win. And so basically when he says like it all worked out in the end, Dr. Manhattan's like, no, this isn't the end. Like, these people's lives that you destroyed, they're like the ones who are still alive, who have to miss these millions of people you killed. They're going to keep going on. Yeah. And I think that's what gets me about the last conversation.
Yeah, it's very much like Ozymandias is asking validation from God that he did the right thing. Because that's basically the other thing is like, what if God actually existed on Earth? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And so, like, he's literally asking the thing closest to God in this universe, going like, I did the right thing, right? I saved humanity. I did what I needed to do. And he's just like, I mean, yeah, it worked. That's about it.
Yeah.
Like,
and I love you, like, bringing that up where he's basically asking for validation from God, because like the page or two before that, Dr. Manhattan is literally walking on water to help sell this image of him.
Yeah.
So it's kind of perfect.
Pretty intentional. So what happens to Manhattan at the end of the film? Or sorry, the comic.
He leaves. He's just, because everyone assumes that he's on Mars, or like he's gone now. Like he already, like that whole like the movie is pretty much a 1-to-1 recreation of the comic book until the very end. Pretty close to it. And so like he has a whole freak out in the movie theater, or not in the movie theater, in the TV studio and everything. He leaves, he goes to Mars, and so when he comes back, he talks to Ozymandias. It's like, I kind of understand life a little bit better now. I think I'm going to give my shot at doing that, so I'm going to go ahead and leave and go and do that. But you do you, and just leaves.
Weird, but I guess it's not out of character.
No, like it makes sense from this perspective, because you have the other thing about the comic. I think the comic does a lot better is sell the Lori. Lori in the movie is very plain and very boring. I think Lori in the comic book still isn't the most interesting character, but she has a lot more conflict and a lot more issues going on in the comic book than she does in the movie, and it's presented that way.
She seemed pretty conflicted in the movie. She's got a lot of issues.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is there's a lot more flashbacks to the comedian and what he's done to her and everything, their relationship between each other, and the conversations between Lori and her mom and the comedian.
Right.
Like it's built up a lot more into
Interesting.
her. Yeah,
I already thought that was pretty well done in the movie. So if the comic book expounds on that, that would be even better.
But yeah, like it took me like the 2 chapters that always confounded me the most in this comic when I first read it was the first chapter that focused primarily on Dr. Manhattan, where he's on Mars and he's experiencing everything at the same time. And when Lori is on Mars talking to him, like it's such a headache to read.
That's the one thing I know about the comic, aside from the ending, is that page, I believe it's like 9 panels, and no matter which direction you read it on, or like which direction you read those 9 panels, it still makes sense.
Yeah.
Formatting wise, that seems like the coolest thing technically in the book.
Yeah, like it's like when I got to that chapter, like I just remember like as soon as I realized what was going on, I was just like, this is really confusing at first, but like it's still really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. It's the best way to like really explain like what causes that
things, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something you can't do as well in the movie. I mean, you could do a bunch of split screens, but I think it's more eloquent when you do it in a comic book.
Yeah.
So they're using the medium to its strength there.
Yeah. But that conversation I feel like is a lot better between Lori and Manhattan, a lot better in the comic book because he realizes that all these horrible things has happened to Lori, but she still came out to be a good person. That's technically a miracle. That's like the whole like kind of thing about it at that point. I just think it's well done here. And then the other thing that bothered me about the ending too is there's a moment where like Lori and Dr. Manhattan are like constantly each other and they're about to kiss, and it bothers me a little bit because the whole point of her arc is just like wanting to connect back to human beings instead of being cooped up with God the entire time. So I just thought it was really weird that she would like go back to him so quickly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he is pretty dreamy.
That's true. He's got a massive dong.
It wasn't that big.
Dr. Lapdog.
Oh, no.
It's time for random dancing. That's an iCarly joke. Everyone loves him.
So Bradley, I didn't realize this until like rereading this, but the blood splatter on the smiley face at the beginning, matches very closely to the minute clock hand when it starts.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until like I was like looking at it and like looking at the clock hand and went, oh, look at that.
And that's because that's the kickoff point of the Doomsday Clock, I'm guessing?
It's basically the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Neat.
Yeah, at this point, Ozymandias is like murdering everybody that's ever been connected. That was another thing about so another big thing about Watchmen is Watchmen's very political heavy. Like you can't read this comic book and not like get the political influences that it's going through. Like you literally can't talk about politics in Watchmen. Like you can't talk about Watchmen without talking about the politics and that it involves, because it like Watchmen is set in a very conservative heavy time, right? But it's following very, very liberal people, or a good spectrum of people, I should say, but some of them are more liberal than others. Like
definitely more than average for the time.
Yeah. With Rorschach and Comedian being your two heavy conservatives, and Ozymandias being your heavy like liberal representation. I bring that up because part of the creation of the monster bringing on very much like liberal like people like
what we're trying to say is liberals are going to try to teleport a psychic's good into New York and kill everybody.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Like Ozymandias recruits like liberal stars, I would say. Like that liberals would idolize in terms of like scientists and comic book writers and artists and like he wants to prove their powers combined can create a better world, and then he murders all of them.
Yeah, and then even then, like all those kind of people you were talking about that Ozymandias gathers, like Rorschach even like kind of expresses his distaste for them. He's like, well, I mean, all I need is a guy's hand, and breaking his finger will get me whatever I want.
Yeah. Liberals in the streets, they're dying. Yeah. But I just think that's interesting because so this is where I shift gears and segue into the TV show and talk about it for a little bit.
You've tricked us.
I have. In the TV show, instead of Richard Nixon being elected president for so long, Robert Redford has now surpassed Richard Nixon and has been elected this entire time.
What we're talking like 16 years, 20 years?
So, well, it ended, I think so. Something like that. Over that, probably maybe closer to 30 because it's set in 2019.
Oh, yeah, actually.
Yeah. But because of that, the idea now is that they're living in a heavy liberal society. Like, people turn on their TVs to watch the programming, and it goes through 5 minutes of like warnings of like it has this at this minute mark. There's someone punches a dude in the face at the left word. It's kind of it just shows you that like the point of the two different mediums is that you can't have it like one way. You have to compromise. That's like one of the other bigger themes of the book is you have to compromise and you have to learn to work together, and you can't do one thing the entire way and think that will work, you know? Like that's why Manhattan did never acknowledge Ozymandias, because like you just went all in on one plan without giving a second thought to anyone else's opinion. So it worked, doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like during Manhattan and Laurie's conversation on Mars, both of them to each other were like, you are not even trying to consider my viewpoint. Like you're not trying to understand the point I'm making to you. And at the end of that chapter, Dr. Manhattan's able to do that. He's kind of able to change his mind on humanity. And like you said, that's something that I think that's kind of where he faults Ozymandias at the end.
Yeah. And so I just think that's a really good theme I think it's quote one of the bigger strengths of the series is that you can watch the series and compare it back to where the comic book was in its setting, and you have a really cool like idea of conversation setting of like, well, if we can't have it fully this way, you can't have it fully this way. How do you compromise and have these two parties like work together, you know? But Willer, will you let me talk about the series for a hot minute or three?
Yeah,
or seven?
Joe, go for it.
Yeah, man.
I want to hear about it.
Yeah, so the Watchmen series, like I said, takes place in 2019. I'm going to give you all one guess to guess what city it takes place in.
New York.
Okay.
Yeah, Manhattan.
Wrong. It takes place in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, though.
So a big thing to know about Tulsa, Oklahoma is that in 1921, there was a huge race riot that happened there. Tulsa, Oklahoma used to be known as like the Black Wall Street, where it was like a big black community. It really grew, got really popular.
The BBC, big black community.
Yes. And the show opens up on this like riot happening, and
wait, but hold on. If we've had a liberal president for so long, how come that event still happens?
This happens in 1921, which is before Nixon and everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that immediately kind of gives you the idea of like our main conflict that's going to be here is like racial tension. And that's there in the show, but like I think the show does a really good job of not like making that the 100% forefront of what's like happening, you know? There's a bunch of other stuff going on, but like the underlying motivation of everything is this racial tension that happened so long ago.
So you'd say it does a good job at exploring stuff that's kind of tangential to that issue, like stuff that would also be worth talking about when you're talking about these social problems.
Yes. So after that, it opens up, and so here's the part that I think that drives a lot of people, because I've seen a lot of people like get angry at Watchmen, this like the series, because um it's trying to it's trying to deal with social issues.
It's too woke.
Yeah, but once again, Watchmen already did that when it first came out, so you
Yeah.
can't really. It opens up with a white man in a truck driving down the road. He gets pulled over by a cop, and the cop is a black man. Usually not important, but it's very important for this sense.
Yeah.
Because the point is they're trying to flip that kind of
Dynamic.
Yes.
This time the black cop gets shot.
So,
So,
but here's the most important things. Because of the violence against cops in this town, every cop has to wear a mask.
oh.
So whenever so you never know who you're actually talking to.
That's kind of sick.
Yeah. So, and the show opens up with this guy pulling over this white man, and he sees that he has a Rorschach mask in his glove compartment. Like he just sees him like open a glove compartment to get like his driver's license and registration, and he sees it real quick. And they're a known like KKK-esque terrorist group in the town. So he goes over to his car, and he has to call the police station to ask permission to unlock his weapon.
Oh, that's cool.
So he has to go in and he has to sit there for 5 minutes, and during that time, the guy that he pulled over gets out of his truck, gets his gun, and shoots him.
Oh.
Yeah. But that's like kind of our kicking off point, and like that causes everything. But like it's a show that really explores like it's so much opposite of Watchmen, where Watchmen, the comic and the movie take place in this huge city that's filled with tons of people, whereas this one takes place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is much smaller and has a much more like closer community.
The only fictional story to have ever taken place in such a setting.
Correct. Like never has anyone ever done that before. Well done.
I'm sure there's something.
Yeah. But I don't want to get into a lot of spoilers in the show, obviously.
Yes, don't. I won't allow.
Yeah, but the show does a really good job of taking the liberal idea that I think is being spread around a lot. Like, I don't want to like discourage anyone's opinions on what they think, but like the idea of like you can't have it one way. Like just locking like police guns or whatever, like really like trying to like lock down them won't solve this issue, because it ends up getting someone shot in the end.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool, and I think that's a good message for these times.
Mm-hmm.
Big moderate stance. I think I've seen extremely annoying people on both ends of that spectrum.
Oh, I have too.
I think the idea of parties frustrates me a lot, where you just, I'm more into this party, so I have to align with all their stances.
Like, no,
no, you don't. But not to get too political or anything.
Yeah.
But okay, you've gotten me even more interested, because I was already gonna check this out. But
yeah,
that's cool.
So, and the concept of the cops wearing masks is also something I really love, because it's just like, God, how fair, like. You can't even like the people that like work as cops have to lie about what the professions are. Like they can't even tell people that they're cops. Like your main character says she's a baker, but she's actually like one of the higher detectives at the precinct, you know? But like everyone thinks she's a baker, and like no one knows that she's actually a cop. And like the detectives wear all the superhero-esque garb, which I think is really funny.
That's so fucking cool though, because the evolution of the superhero attire from Watchmen, where you had the Minutemen, and then you kind of had that second generation that, as you were saying, kind of imitated them. But as time went on, it evolved to where like now, in like actual enforcement, like government agencies have to become these quote unquote heroes and wear the masks.
Yeah, basically.
That's a cool way to take it.
Yeah, and they can't. And it's such a fucked up thing where it's like you can't, like, people don't trust the people that protect them. So who can they trust to protect them, kind of thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's wild, and I really love it. They do some retconning of the comic book in the show, but it doesn't detach from the comic book at all, and it works pretty well, and I really like it. um the the people that so some of the characters from the comic come into the show, and the people that play them are doing a really good job at playing them, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
What? Well, I there could only be one then, because if it's that, I mean, they could be really old, I guess.
They're old.
Okay. I mean, Manhattan's somewhere out there in space, I'm sure.
Mhm. But
Just
yeah.
waiting for that last season to come through.
Yep. But I think it does a great job of like expanding on the ideas of what like Alan Moore was trying to talk about, and taking a very creative direction, and really kind of like, can you trust the people you're supposed to trust, kind of thing,
Who watches the Watchmen, right? That's a
Yeah.
big tagline.
That's a big theme. But I really enjoy it. I'm pissed because we got rid of cable, so now I don't have connected. I'm not connected to HBO now.
Ooh.
Get fucked, Joe.
I don't know what I'm going to do, because the last episode I watched was this episode that was entirely in black and white, and it was so fucking good. And I wanted to see what happened next. And
Tell you what, whenever I start it, you can borrow mine, which I might
Oh.
I might start it soon.
yeah, but like I really recommend checking out Watchmen. If you're going to like go in, I strongly suggest before you go in to like read the comic book if you haven't read before. I can't recommend you reading a comic book, Willer, because I have trouble reading it, and if I have trouble reading it, I don't think you'll be able to get through with it. Like, it's like
Wait, what does that mean? I read more.
Miller is
Well-
illiterate.
Stop! I can spell.
No,
no.
it is.
Yeah.
There are moments like Joe was talking about where it's like you'll be like there will be a scene that takes place in the present, but then randomly one of the panels will be of something that takes place in the past, and the
no
text on
delineation.
that panel is an excerpt from a book that is
Yeah.
unrelated to either scenario.
No, I'm not watching it. One, because I don't really dig the art style. Two, not that into comics. Mostly, the Marvel DC stuff I'm not into, but just in general.
Yeah.
Manga is the only good medium out there, so you know me. But yeah,
Oh.
I'm good with just jumping into the TV
Yeah.
show. I think.
I think you'll be fine. And like, once again, if like you look at something like, I don't understand what's happening here, like, just I probably know it, or Bradley probably knows it. One thing we didn't talk about, Bradley, is the Tales of the Black Friar, which is the biggest difference from the comic book and the movie.
Yeah, so are those excerpts even in the movie?
They're in the extended version that I watched.
They are in the ultimate cut, yeah, that I also watched. That's 4 hours long.
It's not 4. Shut up! No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Are you serious? Well, I watched a cut that was not 4 hours, but it also had those excerpts. So I don't know. You're making shit up.
Anyways, let's see.
If we're gonna talk about the Black Freighter,
Yeah, I just want to know what your opinions on it, because I think I have so many mixed emotions about the Black Friday, because I think it's really cool, but I also think it really kills the pacing sometimes when they show up. So.
Yeah, for like, because the thing is, we get excerpts of it throughout the story, just kind of interspersed through chapters, and like there would be times where there's like a really intense conversation going on between characters, and then like little passages of it come up, and I'm like, do we have to do this right now?
Yeah.
But I think by the time we got to the end, I actually really enjoyed it, because this character in this pirate comic that we're kind of following, I think his worldview kind of serves as a warning to like the characters in our story,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like Rorschach and stuff, where this pirate in the Black Freighter story, he's
not a pirate. He's a nobleman from that's important because he's trying to stop the pirates.
Attacked by pirates.
Yeah.
He sees like just all the horrors of the world. He sees death, people attacked, and he has to like make this raft out of corpses. Basically, he's like seen the darkest that humanity can be, and because of this, his worldview kind of gets blinded. And when he makes it back to civilization, he sees things are normal, but his view of the world now is so warped that he like can't believe things are fine, so he defaults to murdering these people, assuming the worst.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's like an exact parallel to Rorschach, where in his early life he has seen things at the worst they can be, and in his pursuit of justice has done like monstrous things to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the parallel applies to more characters than just Rorschach, but he's where I
So
saw it the most.
counterpoint, I think it's basically a 1-to-1 of Ozymandias.
Yeah,
From
I can see it
what I
there.
watched in the movie, I thought it was about Ozymandias as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
think it's there too.
yeah, I don't know.
Because the idea behind Ozymandias is because he has that whole thing about like how he is the smartest man in the world. He's the only one that he feels like he's the only one that sees the big picture. So he feels like he's the only one that can save the world, you know?
Taylor Hebert looking ass.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the character in the Black Freighter also feels that way. Like he's like,
Yeah.
no one knows that
Like,
they're coming.
he's
No
like,
one
if I
knows-
don't make it back home, no one's gonna save them. But
Yeah, but
fucking
me, I
surprise,
have to
they
do it.
were fine when he got there.
Yeah, and like he uses the dead bodies of people to like get to his destination, like Ozymandias.
So right,
Yeah,
and that's
So-
exactly what Ozymandias does.
yeah. So it's like that, and like I think it's a like when you're reading it, you don't understand what the fuck is happening during the entirety of your reading. Like, okay, I can understand why this like there are portions that relate directly to what's happening like on screen. You can like, okay, I get the one for one. But looking back, you realize you're really getting into it's letting you, it's subconsciously letting you know what the mindset of Ozymandias is and why he's crazy.
Yeah,
So
And,
you're on the same page as the author is by the end of it.
And if I want to like throw in some really cool imagery here, one of the kind of like interludes between chapters is where we kind of learn about the history of like these pirate comics and the setting.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that black ship that shows up in the story, it shows up in a lot of that writer's pirate stories where basically it's just full of like these monstrous people, and a running theme in the pirate stories is someone like being corrupted into doing a horrible thing,
Mm-hmm.
and they join their place among like the pirate crew on this black ship. And so, you know, at the end of the Black Freighter story, he, after realizing this monstrous thing he's done, he looks towards this giant black ship and he makes his way towards it to climb onto it. And that very last panel of Ozymandias, which you posted like in our mid chat
Yeah.
channel, Ozymandias is turning away from this world and he's looking at just a big shadow of himself. And I don't know, that's what that feels like to me, is like it's supposed to be that black ship. He realized, maybe on some level he realizes what he's done.
Yeah, the idea behind the ship is that like it's like if you stare into the abyss stares back kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the monsters you tried to fight you end up becoming. But I think the Tales of the Black Freighter, like I have so many mixed emotions because like I told you, like you and I agree, it just comes in the middle of things and you're just like, okay, can we not?
Yeah, I'm glad we got the full like amount of it, because I think it is a really good metaphor for what's going on in the story.
Uh-huh.
There are just some moments where I'm like, can we do it later?
Yeah.
If
we
Bradley's really resistant to pacing, so if even he has problems there, then I could tell
Yeah.
like there's some points where it's really not now kind of points.
I can handle really shit pacing.
yeah.
But holy crap.
It also doesn't help that sometimes like the text that is happening in the Black Freighter is between speech bubbles, and you're just like,
Yeah.
what do I read first?
What?
Yeah, like there's a speech bubble at the top of the panel, a thing from the Black Freighter, and then below that is another speech bubble of someone else talking, and you're just like, so your brain has to constantly switch back and forth of like what you're reading.
Masterpiece of the comic book medium, huh?
Yeah,
That being said, I do like a lot of the stuff Watchmen does with like
mm-hmm.
its panels where like I don't think in any graphic novel, comic, or manga, I don't think I've ever been more impressed with like the characters' surroundings being a metaphor for what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, like there's this moment where they're talking about. I think one character like makes an analogy between them walking through the ice and like their morals,
Mm-hmm.
and then shortly after, like they almost like slip and go sliding too far.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, yeah, I don't know, maybe you're going a little too far with your
That's in. I think that's at the point where Ozymandias is like talking to the people that he's poisoned,
yeah.
and Rorschach and Nine are walking.
I think it's bullshit that people will give, say, Death Stranding, which I'll talk about later. It's like, oh, that metaphor is too on the nose. No, fuck you. Metaphors are good, and put them all over my nose.
Themes are for 8th graders.
Yeah, you're right. You know what?
So Willer,
So
I know you
Joe,
don't. I think you. I have the opposite opinion than you. I really like the Watchmen art style because the reason why I like it is because it's like it feels old in the sense of those old comic books and like how kind of simplistic some of those pages are. But there's such a darker tone set it onto them. It has this good contrast of what's happening. You
Mhm.
know.
well, hit me up when it's redone in chibi art style.
Yeah, but Bradley, like one of the so another thing I want to talk about in terms of the art is the opening covers for each of the chapters. I absolutely love because
Yeah, they look so cool.
because each you don't know this, Willer, but each chapter opens up with a zoomed in, detailed picture of the first panel. Sorry, and
That sounds pretty cool, actually.
it like the first thing you see of this comic book when it starts is the comedian's blood going down the drain and the smiley face in the corner, and then it zooms out from there going to a skyward view. Like it's really really cool in my opinion.
I've heard there's this chapter where it's symmetrical in panel structure. I don't know if you guys noted it, but there's a chapter in Watchmen where each panel is reflected once you get to the midway point, like 1-to-1 or something like that. It's something about time. I don't know.
It's
I saw it
probably
in
the Manhattan. I
Yeah,
think
probably.
Manhattan chapter because
it's I saw it in a video essay once or something.
yeah,
But it seems really cool.
I'm looking at I'm just flipping through it now. I can immediately see it happening. But
I think the midway point should have like a double spread, and you should be able to tell at that point.
yeah. But the other thing about so here's the other thing about I keep flipping back to the ending, but it's like the most like content thing about me and my brain that sticks out that I like comparing the two to. So think about this, Willer. When the bomb goes out in Watchmen, what happens to all the people? They just all vaporize, right?
Yeah.
So when the alien comes down in the comic book, everyone just dies. Like everyone's body just flops to the ground. They're just bleeding out everywhere, and everyone's just hunched over. 3 million bodies just spread across like New York City, just dead.
From like alien radiation.
Ozymandias says they take a psychic's brain and they mutate it and like use that as the base as like creating this alien monstrosity kind of doodad. But like so in the chapter that you see the plan finally happen, the first like 5 or 6 pages is just seeing all the bodies on the street. It's absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, that sounds more horrific for sure.
Yeah, it's just I think it's just like imagine I don't know, like I feel like that would have such a more like big impact on society if there's just a whole city and now you have to you have to clean up the city now and you have to like just pick up all of these dead bodies. It's just terrifying to me. That's about it. But yeah, that's kind of my final thought is I just think like if there's anything worth seeing in this comic book, it's just seeing like the cover openings visually and those pages where you see the plan finally happen. It's just all these dead bodies everywhere.
I just went to that chapter where like the panels are symmetrical, like forward and backwards, and I forgot that chapter's literally called Fearful Symmetry.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the one. On the nose, but it's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for Worm Talk.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Worm was great. I give Worm a solid 20 out of 72.
Oh, not too good.